All right, good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board and valued community representatives. I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we are residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that the voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibility entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Tuesday, April 15th, 2025 Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. With us this evening, we have myself, Matt Provenzel, the chair of the Planning Board, and to my left, our vice chair, Joyce Leary Clark, along with Planning Board members Jeff Brucho and Camille White, and to my right, Jim Mollier, as well as our city staff, Emily Cole Prescott, our planner, and Lisa Harmon, our planning compliance manager. And as always, our city council liaison from Ward 5, Phil Hatch. With that, our first item on our agenda this evening is our approval of our April 1st, 2025 meeting minutes. Board members, any comments or edits? Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I had a comment that they're getting very detailed again, which I'm not opposed to. I think that there are no changes. I just didn't realize we were going to go into as much detail as we have, particularly with amendments to finding of facts. I thought that was just kind of absorbed in. But either way, I always like more detail. I think they did a great job. So I would move that we accept the meeting minutes from April 1st, 2025 as drafted.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Our next item on our agenda this evening is our public comment period. This is a time and opportunity for any members of the public to come before the board and discuss any general planning matters. Please keep project-specific items to a later date once we see those. And with that, if anyone would like to speak before the board, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them appropriately. All right, with that, we will continue. Our next item for discussion is our public hearing guidelines. This is a document that staff, along with the planning board, have put together. If anyone has any questions or comments, please let us know. There's always a hard copy available at the rear of the auditorium.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a comment about that?
Yes, please.
It looks like the link might not be working in the agenda packet, so we'll make sure that that is corrected, whatever the issue is, for the next packet.
Okay, great. Thank you. And with that, we will move to our next item, applications for review and public hearings. Our first item on this agenda is item 7A, and this is Bradley Green's condominium development, map 67, lot 27. And this is a continued public hearing and continued application review for preliminary subdivision, site plan, and conditional use. And this is a multifamily residential project consisting of 32 dwelling units with associated site improvements within the medium density residential zoning district. Board members, any conflicts or disclosures? And with that, anything to add, Emily?
Just a little update. The board at the last meeting recommended that staff prepare draft findings of fact and conditions of approval. Those have been included here. At the last meeting, I have a note here that the board closed the public hearing and continued the application review to this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this moment? Great. If the applicant wants to give us any updates or...
Yeah. Do you want name and address?
Sure, for the record, please,
Okay.
yeah.
David Aronstam, 4 Baxter Lane. Not a huge amount of updates in terms of number of things that we changed or added to our application, but we continue to work on the project. We worked on the docks, the condo docks for the association. That was part of our application, so we've gone through that. I wanted to thank Emily. We got the findings of fact, and they were really detailed, and so we literally went through everything in the finding of fact to see if there was anything else that we needed to do or anything that we needed to provide. We looked at the comments again from the different departments within the city, and we continued to meet with our neighbors in the area to talk about the subdivision and talk about what we plan to do. We met with some engineers again to talk about the project and where we're going to be putting the houses. We talked about the actual construction of it, so we've sort of been continuing to work on it like we always have. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant? All right. So with that, we have before us a draft findings of fact and conditions of approval to provide comments, input, adjustments if we find necessary. Jeff.
Yes, so Mr. Chair, I think the first item that I had in the draft, the preliminary subdivision finding of facts, I believe was item I, that we should make a finding on conforms with local ordinances and plans. The proposed subdivision conforms with this chapter and the zoning ordinances and the comprehensive plan. I'm in favor of we amend that or approve that as it is. I think this proposal, we've seen now for over a year, we've seen several times, several variations. I think it meets a lot of the goals. It obviously complies with our zoning. It meets some of the objective for some housing density. And they've done it in a way that I think flows very well with the theme of the neighborhood areas. We're seeing some increased density in the dimensional standards, but it still flows. It looks like the surrounding condominium associations. There's 3 or 4 in the area that I can think of. I think it's very cohesive in size and scale, and I think and at the same time it's meeting those goals. So I see no reason at this point why we can't approve that. So I would move that we basically just amend the draft conditions of facts for subdivision review item I to strike. The board should make a finding on this. I believe that would be sufficient with the previous verbiage.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
I'll second.
Second by Jim. Motion made and seconded to amend findings of fact I under preliminary subdivision to include that the board finds, based on application materials and testimony, that the board finds this condition has been met, essentially. Any additional discussion?
Yeah, I guess that was just going to be my comment or friendly amendment that we indicate that the standard has been met based on application materials and
Sure.
testimony presented.
I would amend my motion to include that, and hopefully our talented motion writers could continue.
Jim amends his second officially.
Second amended.
Great, thank you. All right, those in favor? Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So Jeff, you mentioned section I within subdivision.
That's correct. If I read it correctly, it was the preliminary subdivision finding of fact.
Yes.
Section I was the first field that had a note that we should be making a finding on.
Yep. So if the board would like to, we want to review all of the findings of fact cohesively throughout each section, and then we can make a motion at the end.
Sure.
See some nods.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, so you're suggesting we go through each one individually and vote on it, or you're suggesting we do it as a group?
Yeah, so I guess my suggestion is, so we reviewed findings of fact of preliminary subdivision. Item I was the only item I had as well on my list that needed to be addressed. So we could move to reviewing findings of fact for conditional use and then site plan. And if the board finds it appropriate, we could vote individually on each one, or a motion that captures all of them, whatever the board seems fit. I guess I'd rather go through each findings of fact first and then make motions, yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me, Mr. Chair. I'll note that under the conditional use review, the only findings of fact I found that we need to adjust would be numbers 3 and 4. And that's all under section 230-1406 of the city ordinances. Regarding number 3, that deals with provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping will provide adequate protection to neighboring properties from detrimental features of the proposal. I suggest that we, I believe we've received the peer review at this point, and it's already commented on the proposal. If the planner can help us.
Yes, Mr. Chair, would you like me to address that?
Yes, please.
So we've received a couple of peer reviews. There were a couple of outstanding comments. So I recommend that the applicant resolve the outstanding comments. So we're pending the final landscaping peer review comments.
So at this point, it would seem inappropriate for us to try to revise that particular finding of fact until we have those reviews in hand.
If the board wanted to condition it to be completed, because this will also go through final subdivision review before a final subdivision review, that is also appropriate.
All right. Well, I'll move that we eliminate the sentence, the current sentence on number 3, and say that the board finds that that the buffers and on-site landscaping will provide adequate protection to the neighboring properties, provided that the final recommendations of the peer reviews are followed.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
Yes,
Official motion?
that's my motion.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Discussion.
Just for discussion, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes,
Um,
please.
I feel like this is very crafted and very guided to buffering from the neighboring properties, right? That's what it's calling out. And I feel like, months ago, we achieved what I think everyone was, or I felt was a very solid plan about the abutting properties, the buffering that's currently there. In my interpretation of the peer reviews, they had a lot of concern about within the development properties, kind of the side profile properties and interior fill. I didn't view that as much of a concern as the abutting properties around them, because they are changing their model a little bit in the sense of we're showing a little increased density. When we do that, how do we hold them to the same standards when we have a conventional subdivision with lot fill ratios, right, lot coverage ratios, when we're allowing them to be compact, because that's where we're trying to, the city's goals to try to create these a little more density because they're at city infrastructure. So that space between them is going to be a little different feel, but it's going to be unique to their neighborhood. They're building that neighborhood. So I'm absolutely fine with the condition. I would just hate to have peer review come back and have them start to try to force things in that would be like side trees in what we would normally think of a traditional neighborhood, right? This is a little bit tighter because of the density. So I think my big concern to protect the neighbors is those large buffers, the arborvitaes that were between, the condominiums and what they were doing on the front lot. And I think that they have very clearly met that objective. So I would be fine with this language, but I also don't want it to, I don't want to leave it out there that they have to put in an excessive amount of trees because the final peer review says, hey, we want this interior fill. I think.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I think you're absolutely right, Jeff, that I think this condition isn't so much for interior landscaping. It all has to do with the buffer, and I know that because of their new stormwater drainage, they had to build up the site a little bit, and there's a lot of talk about the slopes going down to the neighboring properties. And so there may be a suggestion or two that the peer reviewers have to help that somewhat, but I agree that I think this developer has done a very good job so far trying to protect those neighboring properties. So I'm not expecting peer review to, under this number 3, to be dealing with the interior. It would be just dealing with the exterior and the neighbors, that's all. I may be misreading the number 3, but that's how I read it.
Well, I think I agree that the standard that we're trying to enforce is that the exterior buffering.
Right.
I just would hope that you could maybe change the motion a little bit, or if we're just kind of working through this informally and vote on it at the end, is that, where any peer review that's referring to the exterior buffering of the perimeter property would be addressed. But I think the interior property, we can let that go because they're working to meet the city's goals of density. And looking at some of the spacing, I don't know if I'd want to have a lot of vegetation planted between the structures.
So if I amended my motion to provide in the first sentence after the words neighboring properties, we insert the words regarding exterior landscaping. That, I think, would address the concern that you had, Jeff, there, to make sure that we're allowing the peer review's comments regarding exterior landscaping to be the ones, not interior landscaping.
Should we put like exterior perimeter? All landscaping is typically on the exterior, but should we be looking a little bit,
I love that. I love that addition. So let's put that in there, exterior landscaping on the perimeter. Thank you.
So, not to throw a curveball here, but I want to make sure that this, and board members' thoughts on it as well, I want to make sure that we feel that this finding, it's getting a little bit wordy here, but I don't think we should, how do I say? I'm apprehensive to leave the finding, and Emily, please give us your opinion as well, all up to the peer reviewer in the sense of, I want to make sure that it's not open-ended, and that we're trying to get there, and I want to make sure that we're in agreement that we are, that it's focused at the perimeter, at the neighboring properties specifically, because there were still some, landscape peer review comments about some of the tree cut area and protection areas and some of the slopes, and as Jeff was mentioning. So I want to make sure that those comments are not held up because of this specific finding of fact, because we're still within conditional use. We are going to come back and see this for final subdivision, I suspect. So that's my only, I just want to make sure we're clear to that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I think we're there if the board's in agreement. Yes, Joyce, because we've said perimeter, or how did you word it again, Emily? It was at the perimeter or property line.
Yeah, I guess my only thought, Matt, was that the motion to amend the first sentence after the word neighboring properties implies that we're going back and changing the standard, and I think what we're supposed to be amending is just our findings, not the italicized standard itself.
Yeah, that's great. Even further clarity.
Would you like me to bring up the peer review memo, the latest one you have?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Emily. In those comments, Emily, is there any specificity to section 230, 1406?
Usually Regina breaks it out,
Yeah.
but I think she was just commenting on her previous review. We can pull up that one as well.
Mr. Chair? I have a
Yes.
question. What is the definition of a neighboring property? It seems like it's not a capitalized term in the standards, so just wondering for the purposes of defining this further within our findings.
Sure.
Would it be within the subdivision, like neighboring properties within the subdivision, or is it neighboring properties outside of the subdivision?
Yeah, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in this instance, since there are no individual lots within, and there's just the individual structures, that we're just saying the immediate abutting properties for that particular sense, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
So I agree with Joyce. I want to make sure that there isn't any misunderstanding that we're looking to modify any of the standards or alluding to that. And specifically making sure that the comments are specifically addressing this specific standard. So so we're just 100% clear, that's all. Emily has a thought.
I just was showing you the peer review, and I believe the applicants addressed most of the comments from the peer review. We just don't have the peer review's final sign-off. So I think the board we could pull up the comments provided by the applicant, and we could take another look at those as well, relative to the external buffering question.
If we could quickly, that would be great, yeah. So, not to beat around the bush, I would say, but my first thought was we'd just take out that piece of the peer review that based on the testimony. We have in our conditions of approval, I believe Emily, she has the numbers memorized, I know she does, but we have that section in the condition of approval that all peer review, outstanding peer review comments and everything needs to be addressed. So my first thought was we just take that peer review component out of that finding, because it's a finding, but other thoughts from board members? Emily's gonna pull, you're gonna pull up on the final comments or responses, Emily, you said?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking for responses now.
Well, and Mr. Chair, Emily also pointed out that this still has to go through final subdivision review, so there's still an opportunity to fine tune.
If necessary, correct, yeah.
So this was the February 6th comment response. So this would have been to the earlier landscape peer review.
Sure.
And this is the April 1st one. And then this got sent back to our landscape peer reviewer. We just don't have a final review comment from her on this one.
Okay. So, I guess I feel that this doesn't address specifically section 230-1406. So I don't want to allude to our findings, leaving that section unresolved if there hasn't been any specific comment or request from that specific section. I guess I want to make sure we're clear about that. Because if we haven't asked for anything and the peer reviewer hasn't asked for anything specifically to that section.
I think this is if I can, Mr. Chair, I think this highlighted section is what responds to some of the
Sure.
abutting property lines and protection of trees within
Sure.
the abutting property lines and mapping the trees out in that area. And then this was the plan that was submitted with that. And I believe they also indicated in this landscape memo that they did pull back the grading a little bit from the property lines. So that probably speaks a little bit to that standard as well.
Correct, that was my recollection as well. So can we go back to your draft comments there, an amendment, please? So I guess reading back through, is it clear what we're looking for?
Mr. Chair, I think that the, clearly there could be an opportunity for the developer and the peer reviewers to still have a dispute or disagreement, I suppose. But as Joyce pointed out, that can be something addressed for final subdivision approval. So, you know, I think, I mean, it looks to me from my review of the project and all the comments back and forth between the peer reviewers and the developer that they're pretty nearly there if they're not already there with the peer reviewer. So I don't really see it's a problem, and I am hopeful everyone finds that the language that we have here with the amended motion will do the trick.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members?
And I don't know if anyone seconded my amended motion.
Joyce seconded, yes. Yeah.
I didn't.
Well, I'm sorry, she seconded the motion.
Seconded the original motion.
Yeah, and then you both amended it slightly.
Yeah, and I still have a problem with the amendment because it sounds like you're trying to add regarding exterior landscaping on the perimeter to the standard itself as opposed to the finding.
I mean, I see that standard as really, now it may not say exterior perimeter, but it is dealing with neighbors, and so I've just assumed that that was referring to really the exterior landscaping, or the perimeter landscaping. I might be wrong about that, I don't know. But that's how I'm interpreting it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would concur with Jim that, you know, it's a condominium association. They're investors, they're buying into the common space. So we're buffering between the neighboring properties that are held differently, not in between. And I guess, Emily, my comment is I feel like the standard is really about protecting, is about buffering towards the neighboring properties and not interior. Where was that? Thank you.
I mean, the actual standard, the number 3 standard talks about buffers and on-site landscaping to provide adequate protection to neighboring properties from detrimental features of the proposal. So, you know, that suggests that it's all about the exterior and how it affects the neighbors. So I don't think there should be any confusion about that. And those additional words regarding exterior landscaping on the perimeter is just to make it clear we're not talking about anything in the interior of the project.
Thank you, Jim. Any other, Jeff?
Just wanted to touch base. You had referenced, you wanted to tie it in, and I believe you referenced zoning article 234-1406 for the buffering standards. But that's in our conditional use standard. We'd probably be referencing the chapter 188 -711. I think it's probably going to be parallel wording. But my understanding is that this finding of facts is for the preliminary subdivision. So we should just reference that subdivision to be 100% accurate.
Well, that's why I want to be clear. This is conditional use. We're we're within the conditional use standards. That's why it's gotten a
So we
little
jumped, okay.
confusing. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I'm addressing it because we won't see this again under conditional use. It would only come back to us for final subdivision. So any discrepancy, Emily, right, would require an amendment to the conditional use, which I would like to just make sure we're clear to avoid that scenario.
An amendment or a condition of approval where it's very clear of what you're looking for the applicant to follow up on.
Correct. Yep. Any other thoughts? So motion made by Jim, seconded by Joyce, amended by Jim. Maybe a second amended motion from Joyce.
Sure, I'll second Jim's amended motion.
Any additional discussion? All right. Those in favor of amending conditional use review finding of fact item A3. Jim,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Camille.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Item 4, as you have mentioned, Jim, the proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use of the peaceful enjoyment of the abutting properties as a result of noise, vibrations, fumes, odor, dust, glare, fire hazard, hours of operations, nor unreasonably restrict access to light, air, and other cause.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we eliminate the first sentence under number 4 and replace it with, based upon the application and the testimony of the applicant and peer reviews, this standard is met.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Site plan, it looks like I have a few tagged in site plan. We have A, B, C, H, and T, I think I have.
Did you say B, Mr. Chair? I think it.
Nope, yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A and A and C,
Got a
G,
little-
H, and T.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I got a little excited there on B.
Correct.
So item A, compliance with applicable standards. Any thoughts there, board members?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think, given the buffering proposed and the type of development that we can eliminate the sentence, the board should make a finding on this standard and replace it with, based on application materials and peer reviews, this standard has been met.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to amend item A, or findings of fact A, as discussed? All right, those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Item C, compatibility with neighboring buildings.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to eliminate the last sentence, which reads, after further review and discussion, the board should make a finding in this item. And in its place, state that the applicant's proposed structures are consistent with similar condominium projects in neighboring properties and meets this standard.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Camille.
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Item H, off-site impacts.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to eliminate the sentence, "The board should make a finding on this standard," and replace it with, based on application materials and peer reviews, the board finds the standard has been met.
Thank you for the motion. Joyce,
Second.
second by Jim, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I will vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. That leaves us with item T, audio-visual buffer.
Mr. Chair, I move to eliminate the sentence in T, "The board should make a finding on this standard," and replace it with, based on the materials presented and the peer reviews, this standard has been met.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I'd respectfully ask, can we go back and look at G, just in the sense that it's kind of open-ended, waiting on the peer review, whether we cut and paste exactly what we did on the last comment, I think would be perfect, but we should probably address that we're waiting for a peer review.
So you're thinking about cutting and pasting from up above under?
I was thinking
No, I don't.
essentially what we did from the subdivision findings of facts.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, the conditional use finding of
Conditional use.
facts, and we'll just change the zoning article number.
Number 3.
Yeah, I could support that. is that a official motion?
I would make that an official motion as she has it on the screen.
And I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to amend item G, findings of fact for site plan review as drafted? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I will vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adopt the findings of fact for preliminary subdivision, conditional use, and site plan review as amended.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I did not have any concerns about the draft conditions of approval. They seem to have captured the either comments by peer reviewers or city staff. So I'm fine with them. I don't know if board members have other thoughts. If not, I'll move that we approve the, or adopt the conditions of approval for the Bradley Street project.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we grant preliminary subdivision approval, conditional use approval, and site plan approval for the Bradley Street project.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. If we could briefly, board members, can we, and Emily, can I jump back to our roll call? My fault, I went through that a bit swiftly here. We have our board member, Carrie Lynn Lane, here is absent this evening. She's had something in the family. She has family items to address today. And board member Matt DiCiani, he's not with us this evening as well. Unfortunately, I didn't hear from him, so that'll be a unexcused absence this evening. But I just wanted to capture that before I forgot. All right, continuing to our next item on our agenda this evening, item 7B. This is Eastview Parkway, map 64, lot 6-2-2, and this is a site plan review for a new 17,640 square foot, two-story office storage flex space with associated site improvements. And this is presented by Bad Dog Properties and Sebago Technics. And this is a continued application review and public hearing. This is within the Park North Contract Zone and Portland Road Zoning District. And I believe that's all I have there. Any disclosures or conflicts? Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe the last time the board saw this item was on March 4th, the meeting which I was absent for. I did watch the video in its entirety and read the packets. I just wanted to make sure that no other members of the board have an issue with me participating or the applicant this evening.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Board members, any opinion? Great. And the applicants with us this evening? They're in support as well of your participation, thank you. Emily, anything else to add on this one?
At this time, thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. And with us, the applicant, would you like to give us an update?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Matt Orr, civil engineer with Sebago Technics, here on behalf of Bad Dog Properties. Since our last time in front of you all, we have responded to a round of both peer review and staff comments, have updated the site plans to reflect some of those comments that were made, and in addition, added an additional driveway connection to Eastview Parkway to accommodate the turning movements for tractor trailer on the facility. Other than that, there has not been a whole lot that has changed in regards to utility connections or overall site layout.
All right, great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Jim.
I just have a few questions.
Sure.
So, Matt, I noticed with the truck turning for the tractor-trailer trucks, it looks like they're going to not come down Eastview Parkway, but they would probably come down Waterfall and loop around. That's how your diagram seemed to go. Is that how you're anticipating the traffic to flow there?
Yeah, so we drew it up that way as of right now. I know that was one of the requests on a second round of comments from the city engineer to provide additional movements through in and out of the site. So we will evaluate that again and provide the additional turning movements.
And it looks like, I was looking at the plan, and it looks like there's like going to be a separate, perhaps a separate office space there that for a second use, essentially. And that will also have a loading bay, it looks like.
Yes, there's a second use there for more warehouse space to lease out to a tenant, hopefully. That will be an at-grade garage door, so it won't be a loading dock.
So you wouldn't anticipate like tractor-trailer trucks backing down that part of the driveway to get there?
No.
And I guess a final question, I think with some of the architectural plans, I know we try to have, I guess, the rear elevation and side elevation, they look like there's really no defining features that break them up except maybe a door and a window here or there. Were you planning on anything that would provide some definition to those large, long spaces? I think that's one of the standards we try to follow.
Yep. I have relayed that information on to the architectural team and plan to incorporate that with our next round of responses and plans updates.
No, thanks. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any other comments from board members? Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I guess I'm looking for some clarity. I guess this will be more directed towards staff, is that this is coming through as a site plan review for construction, and we keep referencing the contract zone, the Park North Contract Zone 2. And we've had the correspondence from the legal opinion about our contract zone repeal when we did the zoning revision update. My question is there a reason that keeps showing up on the application? Because we could be essentially doing the site plan review in the district that it lies in, and everything that they're asking for, the uses, office, storage, and warehousing, are all permitted uses in the Portland Road District. So are we doing ourselves a disservice by tying back to the whole contract zone, which seems like that's still kind of, up in the air, or the legal interpretation we haven't sorted out the strings from the old contract zone that are hanging, I guess. So should this be coming through as just a regular site plan for permitted uses where the parcel is now according to our zoning, is my thought. Or should we be reviewing it, keeping that title of contract zone in there, because it adds a lot of question in my mind.
If you could, Emily, maybe a brief explanation. I know it is confusing and a bit complicated.
Staff is referencing it to make sure you know, that there is a contract zone on the property. We have presented information to the city council, and we've worked with our attorney. I'm not an attorney. I can't give this board legal advice. I can just tell you what we've reviewed so far. It's our understanding that there are 3 contract zones in the city where we believe substantial construction has been met. So in that case, there's some rights, we believe, to finish the contract zone as it was contemplated. So if the developer wanted to come back to me and say, I want to amend the contract zone, I would say, no, you can't amend the contract zone. The contract zone is what it is. But I believe that they have substantial construction has been met based on the definition of our ordinance, so they can finish out the subdivision and finish out the terms of the project. That's my understanding of where we are.
Thank you, Emily.
And I'm going to give you the same, so tonight during planning department updates and discussion, I'm going to give you the same presentation PowerPoint that we gave to council last night.
Thank you. Does that help to answer some of your questions, Jeff?
Well, I mean, I guess that would be helpful to have that information before, I think, and the packet that we were provided from Jim Kaxifis seemed like it was very clear that there are basically no contract zones because of our revision, unless there was an underlying use that would have allowed it to remain a legally non-conforming use. And in this case, we have a lot that's a vacant lot, and they were building it up. So why are we even talking about a contract zone? Because everything that they want, it's like that whole contract zone was an early direction the council was taking the community, and now we've caught up with our zoning. So our zoning, everything they're asking for is a permitted use. So I just think, do we even need to reference a contract zone in this review? And I respectfully agree that, it was, this whole area was a contract zone versus one particular lot. But as long as we're not getting ourselves into a more convoluted situation by referencing it as a contract zone, because I see this as a permitted use according to today's zoning, and that's what we're reviewing it under. So
what you could, Mr. Chair, if you wanted me to address that.
Sure.
What you could ask the applicant to address for you tonight is, are the setbacks, the building and dimensional setbacks following the Portland Road zone or the contract zone? Because those are the only other things that I'm aware of in the contract zone that are different than the Portland Road zoning district. But essentially you are correct. A lot of the commercial development on standalone lots is pretty similar to what the Portland Road zone would normally allow. It's just there's some restrictions in the Park North contract zone that doesn't allow residential within the first 600 feet. And then because of that, there's some density allowances toward other portions of the site. So I think asking about the dimensional standards for this side of the development would be good. And then just being aware that there are some restrictions on, like, some some mini parcel layers within the Park North contract zone itself. But I'm sure Matt can answer or come back to you all at another night with what is met where, and maybe this just follows the Portland Road Zone.
Thank you, Emily. Does that add a little bit further clarity? I guess I see it as, I like the reference to it. I agree with you. I like the reference to it, though, because we don't have official determination that the contract zone for this particular scenario has been disbanded or anything. So I think we should address it in some fashion. I think it would be good if the applicant could give us, I see on the right-hand side of your sheet there, the table of front yard setbacks and some of the dimensional standards. So if we ask the applicant if they could get a table side by side for the Park North contract zone and the Portland Road zoning district, so we can see them side by side and look at them, I think that might be a diligent task, but.
I would agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jim?
Well, I read Attorney Castafikis' opinion differently. I thought he said that, you know, certainly if there were contract zones that had never started construction on them, that those would have lost any vested rights. But if there had been substantial construction started, then those contract zones are still good. So I don't know where this contract zone stands. I certainly appreciate Emily's take on it, and I think until we're told that this contract zone doesn't exist anymore, that we, and if it's Emily's understanding that substantial construction was begun, and there's been no determination otherwise, I think for us to review this under the contract zone proposal makes perfect sense. Of course, if, you know, the city's attorney tells us that no, this contract zone died and went away, doesn't exist anymore, then we're left with the existing Portland Road standards.
Sure.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question would be underlying, because I felt like the examples that were given in that legal opinion were with regards to a particular lot with a particular site plan. And you know, it talked about the hotel that was built and there were phases, right? Well, that was all one lot or one ownership, one site plan, one controlled, phased. And that's the way I agreed too, is that it allowed them to build, and if they had substantial construction started on a previously approved, and even though contract zones changed, they could finish. I view this as a little bit different. It's a zone, but this has been a vacant lot and was never developed. It never was part of any real site plan. So it was not like there was a building permit and we knew exactly what they were building. They're coming to us after the fact. So I guess to keep it as simple as possible, I agree with the chair, Mr. Chair. If we were to have the dimensional setbacks and standards met for what the contract zone states they're allowed and what our current zoning requires, if we can check the box that it meets current zoning, I'm absolutely fine reviewing it. If it's checking the box that says, no, this is special permissions that were allowed under that old contract zone, I think we need to put the brakes on and wait until legal gets a final ruling of where the city stands with the contract zones.
Well, no, that's a very interesting take. I hadn't thought about it that way. So you're thinking about it in terms of lot by lot, but when I read his opinion, I was, you know, if the work in the contract zone began, so the contract zone might have included splitting properties up into 10 lots or 20 or 30 lots, right? I don't think substantial construction has to happen on all 30 lots for, you know, those lots to be still under the contract zone provisions. I think if some work is done, you know, in the same way the phases, if some work is done on some lots as part of the contract zone, my understanding from reading his opinion that that protects the contract zone. It protects the whole zone. It's not lot by lot. I think it's the entirety. But I understand what you're saying, Jeff, and we don't have to decide it tonight. You know, some attorney will certainly do that. And I mean, I just see it differently for the there.
Yeah, it's, you both make great points, and that adds to the complexity of it, is that this contract zone is made up of multiple lots. And I think this is the only one like this in the city, where other contract zones are one lot or a couple lots under all one ownership. The other component to this, just briefly, not to open a can of worms, maybe you said it, what I was going to say, but the piece that needs to be understood and determined, and I know our city council liaison here, he knows very well, but all the conditions of approval that are tied into this contract zone and all of the lots and all the properties, if the contract zone is no more and disbanded, how do those, you know, how are those conditions of approval addressed? What does that do, you know, to all the existing lots and the existing scenarios, and how does that work moving forward? So we have conditions and criteria set for this zone specific, and if the zone doesn't exist, how do those conditions be enforced?
And I think that's what the council was wrestling with at the very, very end of last evening
Sure.
during their workshop. So,
I kind of view that as that's your benchmark, right? These contract zones all went through site plan. Those conditions were put on there at the time. That's still a standing document. That is what the city uses as a measure to make sure that they're not expanding the non-conforming use, right? Because now that contract zone is legally non-conforming. It's what the owner has to say, hey, this was what my right was allowed at the city before this magically disappeared. These are the benchmarks of what I'm permitted to use. So they're still there. They're a record. They're just not allowed to continue to grow and to be expanded upon. And so, but regardless, I mean, we're going to get legal opinion. It sounds like there's at least 4 competent attorneys now working on this on the city's behalf. I just want to make sure if we move forward tonight finding this application complete and we're reviewing it under the contract zone heading, are we putting ourselves in a compromising position on behalf of the city, reviewing something for a contract zone that may or may not actually be there? As to where, if it were all the dimensional standards are current zoning, that wording should just be taken out, because we're reviewing it as a Portland Road zone, which is where it exists, and if it meets all dimensional standards, there's no problem moving forward. It's a permitted use.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
I would like to avoid getting into too much of the weeds on this, because you could go down a long, long rabbit trail, and you can
Yes.
join us in the planning department offices if you'd like to pursue that. But Matt, could you just click your button so I can share my screen for a second? What staff was looking at is there's a definition of substantial construction in our subdivision ordinance, and the entire Park North and Cascades contract zones were then adopted into the subdivision ordinance itself, into the subdivision plan itself. So we have, you know, we always look at these amended subdivision plans for Park North and Cascades. So there is a plan showing this lot has been created. The road base is there. And as far as the subdivision goes, substantial construction has been met. So we were relying on this definition partially, as well as on Attorney Katsiafikis' legal opinion. So that's where we had categorized this contract zone, the Cascade contract zone, and one other in the city as the only 3 where we feel that substantial construction has been met. And it seems like it follows the legal opinion provided that they'd be able to complete the project. But in addition to the question, the board, certainly up to the board, again, I can't give you legal advice, but it's certainly up to the board of what you want to do. The application has already been found complete, so tonight is really, the task is really to get the public hearing opened. So either you can open the public hearing or you can continue the public hearing to another evening if you feel like you don't want to open it. It's up to you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Joyce?
Well, the memo says we're asked to determine whether the application is complete, so I don't think we found it complete before. I think there were still some questions
I have that we did find it
that we
complete.
did.
Yeah, on March 4th, I think.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I think that we, for some reason, did not update that language, but it just should say a motion is to, I move to open the public hearing. The public hearing has been scheduled.
Oh, thanks for clarifying, because
Well, no, I apologize. I don't know what that error is from, but.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we open the public hearing.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open a public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect all comments and address them appropriately.
Well, Mr. Chair, seeing no one from the public appearing, I'll move to continue the public hearing to, I'm not sure the most appropriate date, either May 6th or the next day,
Yeah, we had planned for May 6th.
May 6th. Move that we continue the public hearing till May 6th. The applicant is going to be getting us some additional information on elevations as well as other information, so I think it'd be appropriate to continue the public hearing to allow for that information to come before us.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes?
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to continue public hearing to May 6th. Back to the board. Any other comments, questions, concerns, direction for the applicant, Jeff?
I just had noticed some of the lighting plan, the light trespass. Looks like there might be a couple light fixtures that are pretty high. We're over a half-a-foot candle onto two of the neighboring properties. We can just kind of look at tightening that back up so it'll be in compliance with our ordinance.
Great, thank you. Any other board member thoughts? Between Jim and Jeff, you hit the two items I had, the lighting and getting some of those architectural elements to fit within those distances we had, but
And I did have, this was from another project that was in the Portland Road Zone, but those are the setbacks currently, I believe, for the Portland Road Zone. It may be different, this project was on Route 1, but I believe at least the side and rear yard would be the same, as well as your building height. And then going to what's in the contract zone, so you can see for parcels that don't abut residential, those side and rear lot side setbacks as well as building height were all adjusted. So I just wanted to get that out there before we get too far. If there's going to be more conversation regarding the contract zone, its applicability, I think it still applies to these parcels for that case.
so Matt, could you, I'm trying to find your drawing here at the same time. So the difference there on the side yard, so we're 20 feet if it's abutting a residential,
Otherwise, it's reduced to 15.
and otherwise it's reduced to 15. And then if you jump back, just for clarity, back to your other document there.
It's 20
It's
feet.
20, right.
Street frontage, too, is different.
Yes.
Contract
Which-
zone is 100.
And again, this specific one I pulled up was on Route 1. I know there are different setbacks, at least for front setback on Route 1 compared to other areas in Portland Road.
Any other thoughts or questions, board members?
Mr. Chair, would it be possible, you had asked of like having those tables side by side. Maybe at the next time we see a sketch plan, you could just have like a different colored line on one of the site plans so that we see where the setbacks fall, what you have proposed. And like I said, if it all falls into the underlying zone, the Portland Road zone and our current zoning, then I don't see an issue about moving forward with it as a regular site plan review. It's just if you were trying to use some of those caveats that were a conditional or benefit to the contract zone, makes me a little hesitant at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, and to answer that right away, I mean, we are. The side and rear lines that we show are 15 feet because it does not abut residential properties.
Yeah, and I think we have to have a decision on that at some point, because, I mean, personally, I agree with Jim's interpretation of Jim Katsioufikis's letter, that in fact, this is a lot in a valid contract zone and it's still bound. What I worry about is I don't think if this is a valid contract zone, we're allowed to review this as a Portland Road lot because this lot is part of the contract zone. I don't think you can just pull lots out of the contract zone and treat them differently. I think this is bound up with the contract zone.
So I guess, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
with that thought process, if this owner just wanted a smaller building and he wanted to have a 30-foot side and rear setback all the way around, that would still be permitted,
Oh, sure.
right? So it's just that they're trying to utilize the benefits of what the contract zone was to their point. But if there's question about the contract zones existing or not, and it was reviewed as the underlying district, if they met the standards of the Portland Road, there's no harm, no foul. They're not trying to use any benefits that existed with the contract zone at that point. It's like they bought this land without a contract zone being there in the current zoning ordinance. It would be the standards that we'd be reviewing to.
Yeah, and maybe we just, I mean, if we were pushing this forward without a decision on the validity of the contract zones, maybe we just have language, in the alternative. It's acceptable under each, that sort of thing. Hopefully, we won't have to get to that, because we'll get a solid answer.
I think if I can, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
what Joyce is referring to is you can't just pull properties out that have like that, have some restrictions on them, like that 600-foot. Elliott has a 600-foot no residential in the very front. And other properties along Portland Road don't have that. That's a specific contract zone requirement.
Right, you can't cherry pick lots.
Right,
Pull
but
them
you
back
could
out.
make something more conforming, provided it doesn't cause an issue with the restriction to both the contract zone and the Portland Road
Which is what Jeff's
zoning
saying too,
district,
of
which is
course.
what Jeff is saying.
So Matt, if I could, the side and rear yard setbacks, are those the only dimensional standards that differ from the contract zone in Portland Road? Do you know? I know I'm putting you on
No,
the
you've-
spot a little bit here.
You have a 40 versus 60% coverage too, I think.
So I guess specifically, anything,
Front yard as well as 30 feet.
right, but you're not within that 30 feet, even though you're.
Nope, correct.
So you would.
Right, so even if that did increase, it wouldn't be an issue. It's side and rear and how we position the building, so.
Sure. So I guess, Emily, we should, I know I said I like understanding what we're doing and not to sort of go back. But I think we should be 100% clear as to what the board is reviewing the application under. So if it's contract zone, we take out the Portland Road verbiage in there, and vice versa. If it must be under Portland Road, we take out the contract zone. I suspect that we haven't been given any direction or determination that the contract zone is now officially void. So I suspect it's going to be contract zone, but I guess from hearing from board members, I think we need absolute clarity and certainty there.
So as far as just the labeling, we've labeled these in contract zones forever, that they're under both the contract zone and the zoning, because there's pieces of the zoning that still apply.
Okay.
So that's why we always label both. So it's not like you're picking and choosing necessarily. I know it's getting really confusing and we're getting way into the weeds.
A little bit.
But like there's sections of the zoning ordinance we want to make sure that are applicable when we review it. So we always say both, it's the Park North contract zone and the whatever zone it's in.
Sure. And we've never questioned it before. It's just now with the contract zone component. So, okay. Do you think we can get a memo from, I guess,
I think at the end of this, I should capture all of your questions, because there will be more questions as we go through the workshop from last night, I'm sure.
sure, okay. All right, any other board member questions, comments? So we've extended and continued the public hearing component of this to May 6th. We've given a few comments and items to revise the applicant, so then I guess a motion if the board is ready for go ahead, Jim.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we continue this application till May 6th.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
Second?
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. All right, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, continuing along, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 7C. This is Eastview Parkway, map 64, lot 6-2-6. And this is a proposed 6-unit professional office building with associated site improvements presented by Bedard Homes and DM Roma. This is a continued application review and public hearing this evening, and this is within the Park North contract zone and Portland Road zoning district. Board members, any disclosures or conflicts? Seeing none, with that, Emily, anything to add?
Nothing to add from my end, Mr. Chair, thanks.
Thank you. All right, we have the applicant with us this evening.
Good evening. Jason Haskell with DM Roma Consulting Engineers here on behalf of Bedard Homes. Mr. Bedard is actually here with me tonight if you have any questions for him as well. Really, since the last time we met, we've picked away at some of the things that we've talked about during the last meeting, and then reviewed the landscape architect peer review, and kind of came forward with a response to comments. Really, kind of some of the things that was brought up at the last meeting that Mr. Brochu you brought up was related to the sound ordinance and the HVAC equipment that is going to be out there. It did turn out that it's going to be higher than what's allowed at the property line based on the zone, based on the good neighbor ordinance. So what we're proposing is a stockade fence to provide a sound buffer between the two properties. Then also another item was, hopefully that was addressed, was the turning movement of the trash truck being able to leave the property. Another item that we've been working with is the part of the traffic movement permit for the Park North development, a traffic impact fee has to be paid to the town of Scarborough. We went through and worked with Saco Technics, who came up with or prepared the original traffic movement permit, worked with them to get the calculation in the equation, and then provided that information to the town of Scarborough. Their peer review has sent back saying that the fee that we came up with is accurate and that we'll pay that prior to the pre-construction meeting. Also, we have gone through and added some more landscaping based off of the comments that was provided by the landscape peer review. We've added some more landscaping to within the parking lot. There was an area that was considered snow storage that the peer reviewer asked would be something more formalized for the landscape. So what we're proposed is a planting bed with perennials. That way in the winter, when the perennials have died off, we'll be able to use it for stormwater, and then, or not stormwater, snow storage. And then in the spring, the flowers will grow back up, or they'll be replanted if there was any issues over the winter. We've also, one of the other concerns was the buffering between properties. I know that one of the bigger issues is buffering between properties when you're looking at parking lots. So we've proposed some evergreen trees along the property line on the back side, I guess it would be the west, or the east side of the property, between the parking lot and the abutting property, lot 7. We also responded to a few of her questions about some of the tree clearing that's going to need to be done on the rear of the property within the stormwater easement. And hopefully we've addressed all of her concerns and comments. We'll have to wait until we get her response at this point. And since you've already had the discussion, since this is part of the Park North development and the contract zone, we did take a look at some of the numbers of the setbacks prior to the meeting, mostly we had a phone call, we requested a phone call with the city planner, and she responded, kind of giving us a little bit of a heads up on some of the concerns with the contract zone out here. The side setbacks going from 15 feet to 20 feet does cause a slight issue with our side setback to the west. It's 19 feet instead of 20 feet right now, so we'll shift over the building another foot if that's acceptable to the plan board. We can at least make that side in conformance with the Portland Road zoning district. The larger issue that I'm not sure of if there is an out on this is the minimum road frontage for the Portland Road is, I believe, 200 feet as the previous applicant expressed, and the lot is only 130 feet wide. So that would be kind of a complication that we wouldn't be able to meet the current Portland Road standards, but obviously when the lot was created, it was created as part of the Park North contract zone 2. So that we'd like to move forward with the current contract zone, but obviously we can have the conversation on that. At that point, I guess here to answer any questions you may still have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Haskell, I noticed you addressed a little bit about the heating and cooling exterior units. You couldn't put all 6 out back. The note said that you're putting 2 of them closer to the front walkway, and due to the noise ratings, you were going to put a stockade fence around, and that included both sections, so the 4 that were on the rear and the 2 that were on the front. So you're making some audio buffering with the stockade fence?
Correct, sir. Yep.
Okay. And then I guess just to kind of summarize, with regards to making the building the setbacks of the Portland Road District, right? If you moved it that 1 foot, all your other setbacks would be conforming. It's just the legal road frontage
Correct.
that makes an issue for your particular design. Okay. I think those were the only 2 items that I had, Mr. Chair. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Jim?
Jason, I just had a question about not knowing anything about noise, except when it just seems too loud. How does a stockade fence cut down the noise of those
It's the
HVAC?
materials. The wooden materials kind of absorb
Is that-
some of the noise, yeah.
Is that
At
right?
least that's my understanding. I'm definitely not an expert in that field, but that's my understanding, that I've seen that used for buffering. It seems to be short-term, a little bit better than vegetation, unless you come in and bring in, 8-foot tall, 6-foot tall evergreens and plant them around it. I don't know if that would be any better or worse than a stockade fence.
So stockade fence is an effective way of minimizing the noise for the property line. That's great. I just had a question about that.
Perfect.
My other question was going to be about the elevations, but I went back to the package that you provided for us for the last meeting that you were at, and it looks like your building has architectural features all around, and so you folks have done a really nice job on that. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts, questions from board members?
Yeah, I guess I was going to comment on the elevations also, but I think it's because Mr. Bedard's a builder, so he's probably advertising a little bit here too. If you have a builder in a really unattractive building, I don't think it looks too good. But yeah, and maybe I don't recall whether you were on the board, Jim. I know we had a lot of discussion about sound buffering back with the Thibodeau property and the
Yes,
compressors.
I was on the board then. I think
Yeah.
I missed that particular meeting, but I watched it on TV, and I was commenting as I was watching it, so, because
Yeah, I think we got quite an education on
did.
on
did.
solid masses being effective sound buffers.
That was very helpful, but I obviously forgot some of that. so
Yeah,
thank
and I appreciate the fact that, I mean, these are all, there aren't any residential uses right close by to this property anyway, right? So,
No.
I also appreciate the fact that you're not in someone's residential backyard.
Right.
Great, thank you, Joyce. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I guess one quick thought, those outdoor units, can you get a manufacturer sound enclosure with them? And that might be a opportunity in lieu of fences, but we don't have to make a decision right this second. But other than that, I don't have anything else to add myself.
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I'll move to open the public hearing.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion to open a public hearing on this item? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open a public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them appropriately.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one from the public wishing to speak, I'll move to continue the public hearing till May 6th. Just in the event something else pops up, but I would also request that the city staff provide us with proposed findings of fact and conditions of approval.
I'll second.
Thank you for that motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to continue a public hearing to May 6th.
And Mr. Chair, I'll also move to just continue this application in its entirety to May 6th.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I will second.
Second by Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion to continue application review to May 6th?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I do
Yes.
have a question. Related to the contract zone, how is this going to work with the lot dimensions not actually meeting the Portland Road? What is the procedure moving forward, I guess? Because if the lot that was created out of a subdivision is is no longer buildable, how is that regulated, I guess?
Sure. And Emily can correct me if I'm wrong, but as it stands right now, we have city staff and council working through that item. But as it stands right this second, that contract zone's in effect.
Okay.
So that's,
So the way that the legal opinion was worded, if I can, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
We believe substantial construction has been met to complete the project. Plus, the lot was already created under subdivision review, so the lot is there
Okay.
under subdivision statutes.
Okay. Thank you.
So I hope that answers that.
Definitely. Thank you.
yes, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor of continuing application review for this item and receiving draft findings of fact and conditions of approval to May 6th? Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening, item 7D, is 60 North Street. This is map 39, lot 36, and this is a request to convert existing residential space into office space, and this is presented by Mr. David Trottier. This is a continued application review and public hearing under a conditional use request within the high-density residential zoning district. Board members, any disclosures or discrepancies, conflicts? Disclosures or conflicts? Seeing none, no. Emily, anything to add on this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the last meeting, we were asked by the board, the staff was asked for us to go out with the city engineer, meet the applicant on site, and review parking considerations and layout. We did do that site visit on March 24th, and as a result of that visit, the applicant did update the sketch showing the parking layout to demonstrate adequate parking. I believe there's 5 parking spots that meet the 9x18 dimensional standards requirements of the ordinance shown on that plan. There's the way the applicant's going to use the space, there'll be 750 square feet used toward the office space. We vetted that out with him on site as well, even though I think we had listed 793 with closets and things like that. But 750 square feet would be the office space. Even if, let's say, 6 parking spots were necessary, there is definitely room to get a 6 in a parallel parking fashion. Lisa, our manager here, went out with me on that. So, and Joe met us on site as well, and we reviewed the parking layout and thank Mr. Trotter for his time on that also. And then additionally, he provided some documentation from the Historic Preservation Commission review on parking from a few years ago, and there'll be no changes to the pavement area. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this moment? And with us, Mr. Charter, anything to add?
Yeah, I want to say, Jeff, you were right on the last meeting. My parking stalls were not adequate, so that's on me. I mean, we fixed it this time, so it's a good catch. I was wrong. But no, I mean, I don't have anything to say, just here to listen and answer questions.
All right, great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant this evening? No, so Jeff?
Obviously, it's a little hard on scale, so both Emily and Lisa went out and met Joe on site, and you determined that for the square footage that there are 5 places, we could fit a 6th, and our ordinance turning radii would be met, right? So,
Yeah, that's why that 6-1 would be a little tight. So they'd be parallel, but they only really need 5 based on the 750 square feet.
so my concern was like the 3 facing towards North Street and the lawn area. There's adequate space to back out, and it's always just a tough thing to understand is that I never want to feel like applicants have these huge hurdles to jump with turning movements and drafting and stuff like that. So sometimes when we have a plan like this, it's a little tough to see the scale. And now that we have staff review, you guys were all good that those turning radii are appropriate to get in and out. I'm fine that he has the parking spaces he needs. So.
And when I tried it, when I met everybody there, I mean, I got a good-sized SUV and piece of cake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeff.
Nobody's backing out onto North Street, which is what we were most concerned about, of course.
Yeah, staff review addressed that with me in 2013, but yeah.
Great, and Jeff?
Do you have a comment you want to talk
Nope.
about? So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I would move to open the public hearing for 60 North Street.
Second?
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open a public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening that would like to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them as necessary and appropriately.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Archer, 185 Bradley Street. I want to thank this board and the staff for the critical thinking and for the independent review of this, of all the applications. And in this particular one, I did have a concern also. I was on the 2013 HPC, and we discussed the parking at length with Mr. Trottier, as well as other things. I do realize this is office space and it's used within the property, and it is in the packet that if anything goes exterior, that it would revert back to HPC. But I do agree with the 5 parking spaces more than the 6 parking space. I think that would be very difficult with what is allotted coming in around the back of the building. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to close the public hearing. Back to the board. Any final thoughts, questions, concerns? We also have draft findings of fact and conditions of approval to review when the board's ready.
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate to start going through the proposed findings of fact.
Sure.
Proposed finding of fact number 8, I think we can fill in some of the blanks now. So we can, one of the blanks is one resident chose to speak, and the board then closed the hearing. So I'll move to amend that finding of fact to read that way.
Great, thank you for the motion, Jim.
Do we feel it's appropriate we do each one at a time, or can we have Emily put it up and we'll make our edits and then make one motion on the edited draft findings of facts? Just to be expeditious. I don't know which way is the best.
No, I'm good with that.
I'm comfortable with that as well.
Yeah.
Yep,
So,
let's do that. So, excuse me. Emily, did you capture that?
Mr. Chair, I see we need to address number 9, B, D, and J. Those, J with 3 little i's. Those are the 3 that I have. I don't know if anyone else has any.
I share those notes. See some head nods there, yes.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll suggest that we, on 9B, I suggest we eliminate the last sentence and insert the testimony of the applicant together with application materials demonstrate the standard is met.
Any comments from board members on that amendment? See some head nods, so that's good. Board seems to be in support of that.
All right, on 9D, I think we could say, we could eliminate the existing sentence and insert, based upon the application, staff site visit, applicant's responses and testimony, the standard is met.
Any thoughts from board members on that amendment?
Sounds perfect.
No adjustments on that amendment?
And then, Mr. Chair, the final one, 9J, 3 little i's. I think we could eliminate the last sentence and insert, based upon the applicant, based upon the application and testimony of the applicant and site visit from staff, this review, this standard is met.
and we just consider that no exterior changes were proposed, no exterior lighting changes were proposed.
Yeah, I'm leaving in that first sentence which says outdoor lighting is existing.
Would you like to add outdoor lighting is existing and no additional, I think you're getting at no additional lighting is proposed?
I understand now what Jeff is saying.
Keep going with it sort of thing.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Thank you, Jeff, that's good. And that's it, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Jim. So we have findings of fact that we've amended. We finished item 8, and we amended B, D, and J3. Jeff?
I was just wondering, there's several places that we talk about, peaceful enjoyment and where we reference hours of operation. I would feel a little bit better if we had a condition of approval number 8 that maybe spelled out the hours of operation. Would you be okay, like, presenting hours right now that, we have something that we can hold to?
Sure, I mean, I would say no more than 9 to 5. I mean, maybe on occasion, I might see somebody when they get out of work at like 6:30 or 7, but that's probably almost nil.
So I think we've done this before. Sometimes we'll do like 8 a.m. to
8 to 8.
8, so we're within our zoning ordinance. It gives you some flexibility, but it does give something very rock solid in a document form.
What was your hours, 8 to 8?
8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah, that's plenty. Plenty for me.
So that's a proposal, Jeff, to add condition of approval, item 8.
Yeah, to spell out that the represented hours of operation would be not to exceed 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And are we, how are we feeling about days of the week? All 7 days of the week, or would it be Mondays through Saturday? Or I just think it's important that we tidy it up for neighbors, right? So they have a good boundary and work with the applicant here. But let's say that in 5 years he starts phasing out and another associate comes in and wants to expand, that we're not just saying, oh, the use was permitted and we're going to let these people go until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. I think it's important that we do set fixed guidelines and a condition of approval.
I mean, Monday through Saturday makes sense, Jeff. I think.
I was thinking the same thing, because Saturday, a lot of, homeowners aren't working, and I see a lot of people on Saturdays. I mean,
Absolutely.
most of the time at their homes, but if they want to meet at the office, then I'd like that flexibility.
Sure.
So that'll all be condition of approval number 8?
Correct.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Apologies, that was 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Saturday.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts from board members on findings of fact or conditions of approval?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adopt the amended findings of fact and conditions of approval for the 60 North Street application.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on this item, or the motion, excuse me? All right. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we grant conditional use approval to the project at 60 North Street.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, and our next item on the agenda this evening, we have item 7E. This is 197 Jenkins Road, map 91, lot 7. This is a proposed private road for Five Star Holdings LLC, presented by Trillium Engineering Group. And this is a continued application review and public hearing. And Emily, I believe the applicants asked that we table this item to May 6th.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, at the request of the applicant, I move to continue review of the proposal to May 6th, 2025.
Second.
All right, thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to continue or table this item to May 6th? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. So with that, we have a few items left on our agenda. Does the board want to continue to take a short restroom break or continue? Joyce?
Could we take a 5-minute break, please?
Sure. We'll take a quick 5-minute recess. Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for that short recess. We will continue this evening with our next item, number 8, general correspondences. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did receive correspondence that was in the after the fact packet this evening.
Oops, okay, thank you. And then our item 9, planning department updates and discussion there. This is going to be your presentation?
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up.
Yes.
So I'm really just providing you what we provided the city council last night. We had a workshop where we had attorney Ben Plant, who is with Drummond Woodsum. Drummond Woodsum was hired as the city's attorney in March, appointed as the city's attorney. Our normal contact with our normal attorney with Drummond Woodsum is Leah Rachin. She was not available last night, so Ben Plant sat in her spot on her behalf for Drummond. And then we had attorney Jim Katsafikis, who is from Perkins Thompson. He is the one who wrote the legal opinion that I gave you copies of March 18th. I think at the March 18th meeting I distributed those. And we had also Tracy Desjardins, our Economic Development Director, and David Toomey, our Director of Code Enforcement, join us, and we sat on a little panel right here in the City Council room last night before the council meeting. So the first thing we asked was, we did introductions, provided a brief overview of this project, recap of the project, results of our analysis so far, and some next steps and action items. So of course we don't have all the players here this evening. I do highly encourage you to go back and watch the City Council workshop presentation, because you may get more out of it than my just explaining this evening, but I want to make sure that you saw this as well. Also, during introductions, we asked if there was agreement and concurrence on the legal opinion, because when you have two attorneys from different firms consulting for the city on the same project, we want to make sure that the city attorney agrees and concurs with the consulting attorney's opinion. In this case, Jim wrote the opinion. He's the consulting attorney, and the city attorney, Drummond Woodsum, did concur that they had reviewed and agreed with the legal opinion, and Ben said that he and Leah had both read that, and agreed. And then we just recommended that because there was no application before the city council, that they didn't go really specific on or 2 contract zones, and that we just kind of stayed high level about the whole process that we're working on. And I think the counselor can jump in at any time if I'm missing anything, because he was present. It sounds like Jim listened in, so Jim, if you feel like I'm missing something, just jump right in. A little bit of a recap to date on this project. We had previously, planning staff had previously brought forward drafted ordinance amendments to Chapter 230, Article 17 of the ordinance to City Council, recommending that there be some changes on how contract zoning is done. I think we had also shared some of that initial work with you all. And we recommended that there be a standard operating procedure going forward. I also wanted to make sure that we had a list of the contract zones that the city had issued, because it's a little confusing right now. There's not a dedicated spot where these contract zones are listed. So for future property owners, we want to make sure that it's very clear as to where these contract zones are in the city going forward. So part of that SOP is looking at how we deal with contract zoning holistically, as well as there were some minor zoning amendment recommendations we had. And out of that draft document work and the draft appendix we brought forward, there were some questions that came up regarding the 2021 zoning ordinance. We also received more information on the Driscoll court case, which was referenced in Jim Katsafikis's legal opinion. So at that time, we requested a legal opinion, and a consulting attorney was hired, and that's where we got Jim's opinion from. In February, staff brought this forward for a city council presentation, and the best way that we knew how to describe it was that we would create sort of these buckets or categories, if you will, and we would go and analyze each contract zone that the city had and put them into these categories based on the legal opinion that was provided. And then we would finish that staff analysis and start some contact with property owners, because we didn't want to just send out a whole list and then have property owners who had contract zones feel like they didn't actually hear from us or get word from staff or from the city ahead of some of this larger public presentation. We also did have an info session for contract zone and property owner representatives on March 31st, where we did present a similar panel that we had last night. We didn't have Attorney Ben Plant there, but we did have Attorney Katsafikis there, and a few other city staff to answer some questions, not to provide any legal advice, but just to provide an overview of where things were at with the contract zones. And then this evening, last evening, we were returning to the city council. We had informed the city council back in February that we thought that process would take about 2 months. That February workshop was on February 10th, and by April 10th, we were ready to present, but there wasn't a council meeting until the 14th, so we were right within that 2-month time period, so that was good. Just a little bit of an overview that we provided last night. We are not talking about contract zones post-2021 zoning ordinance, so some of you may be a little more familiar with these 3 contract zones the city has. These are considered not in the scope of this review. So we just want to acknowledge that these are out there, but they're post-2021. The rest of this presentation will focus on pre-2021 contract zones. Jeff, I see your writing. Can I go to the next slide? This is also available online, or it will be by tomorrow if it's not already. But I did send it to city administration to have it be posted online. I'll give Jeff a second. Okay, thank you.
Jeff's an electrician. He doesn't draw.
Rough. So a little bit of a recap here. Back in February, again, the best way that we knew, that I knew, and that staff knew really to categorize these were to put them in buckets or categories. And the ones that we came up with based on Jim's legal opinion was either the contract was completed, in which case a lot of them would be considered legally non-conforming. So we deal with legal non-conformance throughout the city all the time. There's things that at one time maybe there was no zoning, or maybe the zoning ordinance has changed since the structure was built. So most of these would be considered completed contracts, meaning the project is done, the building may be standing there, and depending on how the zoning ordinance has changed, the structure that exists today may not need either all the terms or some of the terms of its contract zone. So in the legal opinion that Jim wrote for the city, the convenient MD is used as one, and I know some of us were here at the convenient MD review, but that was before the 2021 zoning ordinance revision. So convenient MD's building today, according to Jim's analysis, would fit the dimensional standards of our current zoning. The only thing that really wouldn't fit would be the size of the sign. So the sign itself would be able to continue to exist. We're not going to make them take the sign down. The goal of this is not to be punitive either, by the way, I should just point that out. But it will, and if the sign has to be replaced, then they'll have to conform, that business owner would have to conform to today's zoning. But the building exists, we wouldn't require someone to like move a building, or there's non-conformance standards, and I'm sure you've seen them. We've dealt with them before when we have reviewed projects in the past that maybe are non-conforming. I think it's Article 5 of our zoning ordinance deals with some non-conformance. The next category was substantial construction met. So based on Jim's legal opinion, we had categorized some contracts that, based on the definition of substantial construction found in our ordinances and the amount of work that had been done and some court cases on the site, we had categorized 3 contracts as what we feel are eligible to be in the substantial construction met bucket or category. So then there's the 2 gray buckets at the bottom, requirements not fulfilled or the conditions were not fulfilled. So in this case, in these 2 gray buckets, requirements not fulfilled would be like if somebody came to get the contract zone and then they never got the site plan approval. So like that's a requirement of contract zoning. So every contract zone, just for everyone's benefit here, there's a few steps involved. You have to go to contract zoning steps under 230-1705 of our zoning ordinance, and that requires a pretty extensive process with the planning board where you have to do public hearing with the planning board and a recommendation to the city council from the planning board, and then it goes to city council, and it's usually a 4-meeting process if you count new business in that process, as well as a public hearing is in that 4. So one of those nights is usually a public hearing. And then that's just to change this, essentially to make a contract zone for the zoning. And then the next step is that the applicant has to come in and get a site plan review with the planning board. So it's a long process. So when we say requirements not fulfilled, it's possible somebody could have maybe gone through some of the steps, but not all of the steps. Or maybe there was a requirement of something that they didn't fulfill. But I think the best example of that is maybe someone didn't get site plan review. And then the next one is conditions not fulfilled. So let's say they got a contract and they got a site plan approval, but then they didn't fulfill any of the conditions and maybe they didn't even build it. So those are some examples. At the end of the day, we really wound up combining these buckets to some degree, and we really wound up with what we're calling a null and void category. However, we did receive some feedback from city councilors last night that maybe we want to think about how we're terming the buckets that we had, and maybe either better defining the bucket category names or maybe just changing the wording slightly to make it more clear. We just did put this in here. We analyze as staff these contracts. There could be some people that disagree with us or the analysis, and we've done the best that we can based on our understanding of site operations, existing site that's been built out today. We took a look at and reviewed each contract, and either we used mapping software that the city buys, permitting records, and or we, in some cases, we drove out and made sure that the site was there and operations seemed like they were existing or not. In some cases, we actually spoke with a couple of people about the properties as well before we finished our analysis. So when we categorize these, I know some of you have heard in the past that there's 50 or 52 contract zones approximately. This is what we came up with. Just keep in mind that we didn't count an amendment as a separate contract zone. I think in the past they had been counted as a separate one. We just said we said there's two, there was a contract zone and an amendment. We acknowledged it, and of course we reviewed it, but we didn't count it twice, is what I'm getting at, for the same property. So in this case, there were 29 projects with contract zones that we're considering completed, which, like I said earlier, would be completed / legally non-conforming. It's hard to say that everyone would be non-conforming because, like the convenient MD example, there were changes to the zoning that some of these actually may conform. They may require a conditional use review today. They may be able to be used or expanded in a conforming way. So it's hard to say everything is legally non-conforming, and that's why I was using the term completed, just for some background. But in general, the zoning that was created by the contracts will be considered like legally non-conforming, the projects that were completed under the zoning that was created with those contracts. In the next category, we have, like I said, 3 projects that we believe with contract zones, substantial construction has been met. You'll see which ones those are on the next slides. And then we had 14 projects with contract zones that we are considering just null and void. It's important to note that any contract zone pre-2021 could not be amended at this point. So even if you haven't met if you are under substantial construction, it's really just we're looking at completion of a project. We're not looking at someone being able to amend the contract zone. And then we have listed these out. I don't need to read each one for you. Certainly, I will put this, we will put this in the more section, right, Lisa? Yeah. But I did list them out here. I just want to make sure that we knew what we're talking about, the general location, and we tried to give them the most used or common name of the contract so that people recognize them. So in general, the uses in buildings created by these contract zones will be able to remain unless the use is abandoned. And then as staff understand it, these contracts, like I said, cannot be amended. About abandonment of use, again, it's always possible a property could be used for something else in the future if it meets today's zoning. The other thing that Jim mentioned at last night's meeting is it's possible someone may request a zoning ordinance amendment in the future, and if it aligns with the comprehensive plan, then maybe that's something that the board and council want to consider. The other thing that was mentioned is somebody could expand in a legally conforming method if it meets today's zoning, or could have uses that are either conditional or permitted in the zone, depending on the situation. We also thought it was important to note that even though these contracts and zoning may be in these categories, these projects, these properties themselves have been subject to an approved site plan review, so that site plan information would have to be amended in the future. So whatever we took in, I know some of these are different, but If somebody wanted to do something different, they would still need a site plan amendment if they're going to be changing what's on the site. So exterior changes. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to answer, Jeff, but I will do my best, Mr.
Are
Chair.
you taking questions throughout the presentation? or
Sure,
at
why
the end?
not?
Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you. So that was kind of my point. We've seen historically with all applications, once a map and lot has gone through site plan approval, any changes always come back to us as a site plan amendment, right? We're constantly updating the history on that one parcel, that lot. So in this case, if the use that's on there is no longer legal, if it's legally non-conforming, that site plan is still a live document documenting what should have been there at the last site plan review, right? And then if any changes were to come forward, we're still site plan amending whatever the proposed uses are going to be, whether they are legally conforming under the current zoning, or if there were to be an additional change and somebody formed a new contract zone. But we would still be using that historic base map, the historic site plan, moving forward. We don't just throw those site plans out. The zoning that allowed the use to be there because the contract zone may have changed, but that site plan is always going to be a base mark for enforcement and planning reference as we move forward, right? We're not throwing away the history.
Yeah, no, we're not throwing away the history. I think that's a good summary. We're not throwing away the history. Should I move on to the next slide? Okay. I should note that we did reference last night that we want to look at the definition of essential services with both the planning board and the city council, potentially allowing for cell towers with public safety co-location equipment to be considered under, that are already existing, already developed, to be considered an essential service. We can talk about that in more detail at another time, but because a lot of our contract zones were used to develop most of the cell towers are under contract zones in the city. So moving on, did I go too fast there? Okay, moving on to the substantial construction met. So in general, we believe that these contracts can be completed based on the amount of work already completed and the city's definition of substantial construction, relying on Jim's legal opinion. And we believe that these are the Cascade Road contract zone, as well as the Park North contract zone, and the Ecology School Simpson Road project. So I'll keep going here. So on the null and void category, and again, we may either further define the category names or rename them. I'm not quite sure yet, but we will respond to that comment from last night. But in general, either the conditions or the requirements of these contract zones were not met, or the contract zone is no longer necessary. And then in some cases, these projects may not have been developed, are no longer in operation, and therefore no longer needed. So I'll ask for Councilor Hatch's participation here. So Councilor Hatch, you had a contract zone years ago, right?
I did, yes. My wife and I had a contract zone for a 10-bed assisted living facility on King Street. And by the way, last night she said she wasn't going to pick on anybody, but she picked on me, but that's all right. She's got my permission. So. We ran that business for 20 years, had restrictions on use. The use was obviously not allowed in 1996 when we built. We subsequently sold the building to Thornton Academy, who then converted it to student housing. They had to come back before the council and I think the planning board for revisions to that contract zone. And then ultimately, Thornton Academy sold the property. It's been redeveloped into multi-family housing, so it's no longer required to have that contract. So I'm happy to be on the null and void list, but that's, I think, a good example of what we were trying to get onto that list.
Yeah, thank you for that summary. And so 95 King Street, we all reviewed a proposal about a year or maybe two ago to convert that property into multifamily housing to support workforce housing for the Myers Hotel Group. And that conformed, that proposal that was brought forward conformed to the current zoning ordinance. So that's why the contract was no longer needed. I did also mention to Headmaster Menard that we were going through this process, and he knows that this is where that contract is, so he's been informed.
I just have a question for Emily. I know you mentioned most of the cell towers in the city with contract zones. I know there's a cell tower off the Simpson Road. I drive by it all the time, but that wasn't on the list. Is it possible there are some contract zones that we don't know about, or maybe in the zone that the Simpson Road's in, you didn't need a contract zone to put up a cell tower?
Yeah, I'll check that one out. That's it. So we're looking for any comments like that too. We did distribute a list back in September, and we asked city councilors for any comments on, hey, we think we have everything. If you know of any contracts you want us to take a look at it, please let us know. So I'll add that as a follow-up here to look at. Certainly we want to capture everything, and we have captured everything we could find in the office. But if there's, and that goes for any planning board member, if there's any history.
It's Sherlin Reserve's property.
Yeah. Okay,
Looking
great.
for names.
Only Joyce would know that. She's the.
Everybody knows the reserves.
Well, I know the reserves too, but I mean, you're the repository of the history of Saco, I think, Joyce.
I just wanted the history. I think that might have been existing pre-1985, and I think it's a radio tower. It's not a cell tower. So it was probably non-conforming before we had zoning for height, would be my guess, and that's why there's not a contract zone. But.
Well, we can check it out and see if there's any other info that we should be including, but.
I thought that's why I had such good reception out there. I didn't know. Okay.
And so this is a really good point to bring up, and why staff started working on like the SOP, because it's important that we document these contract zones appropriately, and probably at some point file a notice on the registry and follow a standard way of how these are handled. Putting them in a binder is, now we have them electronically because Lisa scanned all of them and put them in a folder, but putting them in a binder is not ideal. I mean, we have some records stored certain ways, and anyway, we need a standard way of handling these. So some others on here are some of these are no longer in operation. A couple of them were dissolved formally by the city council, so they had actually taken steps with the owner to dissolve the contract, which goes back to Joyce's earlier point. Some of these did require like a formal dissolving process. In one case, we have a court decision on file, which has been referenced in the legal opinion. In another case, we have a housing proposal that was actually developed more as a campground. There was a couple of them were never developed, and then the property, and some of them properties were just developed for something else. So based on this information, we really have 29, our understanding, unless we find one that Jim mentioned, so. At this point, as of right now, we believe that there's 29 contract zones that are completed or that are in a legally non-conforming type status, depending on the details of each one. 3 that we believe there's some ability to finish out the project that was contemplated from the contract zone, and then 14 that are just null and void. So. It doesn't mean the property owners couldn't come back for something else in the future, but that's where things are, we believe, today. And then the next steps are to finish the previously drafted ordinance amendments and the SOP I referenced at the beginning of this for contract zones. We anticipate bringing this forward with other ordinance amendments. We had put those other draft ordinance amendments that the Long Range Planning Committee had been working on hold pending the completion of this work here for contract zones. And then we're also going to be looking at appropriately mapping the contract zone appendix list and other work as things progress, and I'll have to work with legal on that too. So. And then we'll provide an electronic file on the city's website where the contract zones can be accessed. And then we'll be providing broader training to staff on how to answer questions about contract zones. References, states, we just included some references here for you. I think one thing to take away from this is there's a lot of work here, but we only issued 3 contract zones in the last few years, so 2021 to 2025. So that's probably a good sign that the zoning ordinance is maybe working a little bit better than the previous one. Last night we did receive some questions. One of the questions that the City Council wants us to take back and do further research on is looking at the conditions that they assign to the contract zones, as well as the conditions assigned for the site plan approvals, and looking at the legal status. They asked Jim to do some research on and get back to them on the conditions the conditions that were required by those contract zones and where those conditions stand now. So there's going to be a little more info to follow. I do anticipate that will take some time because we're going to have to go back into our archive records here and find some of the older site plan documentation. We have all the we have what we believe to be all the contract zone documents, so no worries there. But going back and finding some of the original site plan approvals may be a little bit of a challenge, but we're going to do our best to dive into that. Counselor, did I leave anything else out?
No, I think you did a great job like you did last night. I think the comment, just a general comment, and I made it on the floor last night, is that we wish we could take a time machine and go back to 2021 and revisit the decision to pass a new ordinance that had, I think in hindsight, numerous flaws and limitations that should have been spent more time addressing, but that didn't happen. And now we've got, it's a fairly complicated set of circumstances, and I think that Emily and staff, she mentioned earlier, making their best efforts. That's all we can ask, best efforts. We can come to some conclusions. We're not going to make everybody happy, but I think we have to do our best to get these CZAs in conformance and then make decisions. Council's going to make decisions. When you're done, you got to come back to us, and it's up to us to we got to put our big boy and big girl pants on and make some decisions that can sort of put this thing to bed. I do think that the fact that you've only had 3 contract zones in the last few years is in fact a good indication. Having been through that process a long time ago, I can tell you that I deserved to go through hoops and hurdles because I wanted to do something that wasn't allowed in the zone. And so I think that high bar needs to still exist for anybody who is thinking that CZA is the way to sort of get around the ordinance. So I'm grateful for all the work you've put in. You've got a lot more to do, but just continue to do the best you can. Your best efforts are better than most, so just keep it up. And if I might indulge you, if you could go back and look at the council meeting, we had a nice budget presentation by the planning department. And Emily sort of stood back and said, can you give me a little feedback on how things are progressing here in the planning department? So I seized the moment because I think if you look at the 7 members of the council dais, I think I've had by far the most exposure to planning board over the last 5 years, even before I was on council, seeing some of the struggles we've had. And I felt compelled to commend all of you. I think for those of you who have lasted with us, I see 2 of you, and we appreciate you hanging in there. I feel very, very confident that the planning process, the planning board deliberations, your focus on findings of fact, which keeps us out of court, are exemplary. I know the mayor has been very focused on, being a planning board member. I'm preaching to the choir. It's a hard job. I mean, it's a really hard job, and you need a certain level of competency, individual competency, which you all have. And so when we make appointments to the planning board, we need to be somewhat cognizant of the demands of the role and the competencies that are necessary when the mayor makes an appointment and the council approves it. So I did mention that I feel very confident that Mayor McPhail she spends a great deal of time sorting through applicants, which aren't many. I've seen her sometimes go out and hand select somebody because she thinks they're competent and talk to them. So the point is that I can honestly sit here and tell you that I am very, very pleased and proud of the progress that this whole board has made and the department has made over the last few years, and we still got a few things left to do, but I'm very encouraged by what I see here. So I just wanted you all to know that, and the public knows that. It was mentioned on the floor last night. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Phil. We try our best. We appreciate it, thank you. Any other thoughts or questions for Emily on contract zones? It's a lot, it's confusing, it's complicated, it's not simple. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I commend all your work, too. I mean, you guys always rise to the occasion and excel and exceed what I'd expect. But where do... I still feel like I'm just maybe missing the legal interpretation, the clarity of our role. What is our role from council at this point to move forward with these contract zones? These applications are coming in. Are you guys going to get some more legal interpretation and direct it down that, okay, it's okay to continue? The legal stance the city's taken is that these contract zones the 3 are all set to continue because substantial completion's been done. And the other ones that are there, we can't expand them because their contract was void. Are we going to get a direction so that when we have an application that comes, and as the planner put out, it's appropriate that they are referencing the map and lot and that it was under a contract zone previously, that we can feel comfortable just to review the process? Because my role is just to look at the ordinance and the setbacks and design characteristics and make sure the boxes comply, and our interpretation for the gray areas, for buffering and that sort of stuff. I'm not an attorney. I just, is it okay to move forward with the process of review that we're doing, or are we needing to stop until this gets resolved?
Yeah, so we're going to go back to city council, and then we'll get the final info back to you, and as quickly as we can. I mean, Lauren in our office is already pulling together the documentation that council requested last night. She started this morning. I do anticipate it's going to take probably 3 weeks for her to get all that documentation together. But like I said, we will be back.
Your job is hard enough, okay? So you do need policy standards from the council, and we're well aware of that. At least I am. But we're not quite there yet. So I think you almost have to have the status quo mentality, in my opinion, until we can give you that direction that you're looking for. And then once you have it, and hopefully it's clear, you can get back to your job, because you described your role perfectly. You have a set of ordinances, you have a set of standards, and all we ask is that you monitor each application against those standards, and they have to be clear. So I think we'll get there. We just need to pound through a few more details before we can give that to you.
Great, thank you, Phil. We'll look for your direction.
All right, so we'll make sure this is in the more section of the agenda category, and we thank you for listening. Sorry, Jim, you had to listen to it twice.
I understand.
It's much
Okay.
better in person. Great.
Thank you.
With that, we'll do any planning board comments. Any additional items for discussion? Great. Well, with that, I thank everyone, and we will adjourn at 8:47 p.m. Thank you again.